Dear delegates and colleagues, if you could make your way to your seats, we'll be starting momentarily.
Good morning, Excellencies, distinguished delegates. I declare open the High-level Political Forum on Sustainable Development convened under the auspices of the Economic and Social Council at its 2025 sessions. And I call to order its first meeting. Before proceeding further, I note that this year we are celebrating the 10th anniversary of the adoption of the 2030 Agenda and its 17 Sustainable Development Goals. We invite you to direct your attention to the screens for a short video produced by the International Institute for Sustainable Development. It highlights the historic adoptions of the 2030 Agenda and its progress and challenges we have encountered since then. Please play the video.
We have reached a defining moment in human history. The people of the world have asked us to shine a light on a future of promise and opportunity. Member states have responded with 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development.
Each lantern we hold represents the hope we have for our future because of the commitments you have made to the global goals.
Today I look out to this room and I see power. I see people in a position to either make or influence the decisions and actions we need, but the world doesn't need any more power. What we need, if we're ever going to come close to reaching our 2030 goals, isn't power. What we need now is action, and to get there, we need some courage.
We have made progress, but I think it's fair to say that this is not the halfway there the world had imagined in 2015. The multiple crises we are experiencing are a wake-up call. I believe we can turn them into an opportunity. The VNRs this year also offer a great deal of hope. Countries implemented innovative solutions and policies to build back better. Above all, the VNRs demonstrate the incredible value of the Sustainable Development Goals in holding governments, development partners, United Nations agencies, and other stakeholders, in other words, all of us, accountable for achieving sustainable development.
We therefore must do much more and do it now. Much more because a heightened sense of urgency is the strongest motivation we have to help us deliver transformative results.
I now invite the forum to turn to its provisional agenda as contained in document A/HLPF/2025/1. May I take it that the forum wishes to adopt the provisional agenda as contained in the document A/HLPF/2025/1. I hear no objection. It is so decided. I now deliver the opening remarks on behalf of the President of the Council. Madam Deputy Secretary General, Excellencies, distinguished delegates, stakeholder representatives. On behalf of the President of the Economic and Social Council, who sends his deep regrets for not being able to join us today, I am honored to welcome you to the 2025 High-level Political Forum on Sustainable Development, convened under the auspices of the Economic and Social Council. As we commemorate the 10th anniversary of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, we are deeply concerned about the little or no progress in the SDGs and the realizations of sustainable development. Since only 17% of the SDGs have made progress, while others face stagnations or even reversal in some cases. The annual financing shortfall has now exceeded $4 trillion to achieve sustainable development. This is a sobering fact, but also a call to action. The persistent and emerging challenges, including protracted and new conflicts, rising poverty, widening inequalities, and worsening climate crisis, continue to severely impact efforts to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. Rapid advances in artificial intelligence and digital technology present both opportunities and challenges. Economic shocks and humanitarian emergencies also threaten progress. It is high time we reflect upon the ways and means to bring the SDGs back on track. We need renewed commitment to multilateralism and coordinated actions based on trust, harmony, and solidarity to restore momentum and deliver on our shared commitments. This year, HLPF is a crucial moment that gives us hope and encourages us to think collectively, outside the box, guided by the overarching theme of advancing sustainable, inclusive, science and evidence-based solutions for the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and its Sustainable Development Goals for leaving no one behind. Over the next 2 weeks, we will conduct in-depth reviews of the SDG 3 on good health and well-being, SDG 5 on gender equality, SDG 8 on decent work and economic growth, SDG 14 on life below water, and SDG 17 on partnership for the goals. Our discussion will be informed by key reports that will highlight data and analysis of the gaps and challenges and showcase solutions. These include the Secretary General's reports on SDG progress to be presented later today, reports from the regional Sustainable Development Forums, and reports to the theme of the 2025 sessions of the Council and HLPF, as well as on long-term impact of the current trends on the realizations of the SDGs to be presented at the ECOSOC high-level segment. We will hear perspective from the regions and the United Nations Environmental Assembly and they engage with local and regional actors as well as major groups and other stakeholders in thematic discussions to review progress. This is also an opportunity to advance the measures for addressing the unique challenges and vulnerabilities faced by African countries, least developed countries, landlocked developing countries, and small island developing states, and the specific challenges faced by the middle-income countries. I wish to stress the need to uplift marginalized voices, especially women, youth, and vulnerable communities, whose participation is essential for effective solutions. We will observe the presentation from the 37 countries through their voluntary national reviews, sharing experiences, challenges, and lessons learned in advancing the SDGs. Most countries are presenting their third VNR, while several are already presenting a fourth review. Expert group meetings organized by DESA and other UN partners have laid the groundwork for our deliberations, including by bringing together experts from multiple fields to identify key challenges, opportunities, and synergies across the SDGs. The ECOSOC high-level segment on 24 July will discuss globalization's long-term impact on the SDGs and explore ways to strengthen the ECOSOC role to ensure that it is more effective in responding to the challenges posed by a rapidly changing world at a time when the UN and ECOSOC are commemorating their 80th anniversaries and our multilateral system is being tested. We hope that those discussions and resources will support informed decision-making and renewed action to advance progress across the SDGs, with governments continuing to play a central role in bringing back the goal back on track and to finish the line. Undoubtedly, the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and its 17 SDGs must remain our blueprint to building a more inclusive, thriving, and healthy world for all. The outcome of the 2024 Summit of the Future and major conferences and milestones in 2025, including the recently concluded 4th International Conference on Financing for Development, together provide a comprehensive roadmap for bolstering efforts to achieve sustainable development. There are also concrete opportunities to foster more inclusive, coordinated, and effective multilateral solutions for people and planet. Excellencies, dear colleagues, the HLPF and ECOSOC high-level segment constitute the apex of the Council's annual cycle, embodying its central role in fostering inclusive policy dialogue, coherence, and guidance. We gather here not merely to measure progress, but to reignite purpose. In the lead-up to this forum, various ECOSOC segments, forums, special meetings, and sessions, subsidiary bodies have brought together governments, the UN systems, and diverse stakeholders to explore the ways to advance our commitments and support preparation toward key intergovernmental processes. They advance concrete policy guidance and serves as inclusive multi-stakeholder platforms to deepen dialogue and understanding on key issues. We encourage you to actively engage in the official meetings of the forum, as well as in the valuable array of special events, side events, VNR labs, and exhibitions organized by member states, the United Nations systems, intergovernmental organizations, and major groups and other stakeholders, which offer different formats and approaches for enriched conversations in advancing key issues of common concern. I also encourage delegations to take full advantage of the general debate focusing on the theme UN80s, catalyzing change for sustainable development, to share experiences, lesson learned, policy guidance, as well as provide concrete and transformative actions and initiatives with impact on the ground. Your voice matters. I invite all the participants, both in the room and online, to join our discussions using hashtags HLPF and SDGs. Share your ideas, ask questions, and contribute to shaping our future. Let's harness this HLPF to catalyze bold action to advance the SDGs and deliver on our promises. I look forward to enriching and constructive deliberations. I thank you. I will now I'm pleased now to welcome Her Excellency Amina Mohamed, Deputy Secretary General of the United Nations, and now invite her to deliver a keynote address.
His Excellency Mr. Lok Bahadur Tapa, the Vice President of ECOSOC, Excellencies, and most importantly, all those organizations and people that have come into the UN at a really important time in history to reaffirm our commitment to the 2030 Agenda. In 2015, the world made a landmark commitment to achieve sustainable development and ensure that no one is left behind. The 2030 Agenda built on previous decades of development efforts and carried forward the vision and the lessons of the Millennium Development Goals. It framed the Sustainable Development Goals around a paradigm shift that integrates the three core dimensions of sustainable development: inclusive economic growth, social inclusion, and environmental sustainability. It also underscored the vital role of effective governance and strong institutions. It carried a promise to everyone, everywhere, to live in dignity on a safe and healthy planet. Today, a decade later, we meet again as the world grapples with conflicts and deepening geopolitical tensions. The fabric of multilateralism is being torn, and the SDGs seem out of reach. Hard-won development gains are a serious risk, as a multitude of challenges exacerbated by the chronic shortfall in adequate financing. Alarmingly, half of the world's poorest countries have yet to return to their pre-pandemic income levels. Inequalities have amplified, trade tensions are escalating, the climate crisis is getting worse, democracy is under threat, and the debt crisis continues to tighten its grip on the world's poorest countries. The situation is truly sobering. Yet, the latest data show that while progress on the SDGs have been uneven and limited, there is reason for hope. Social protection and health systems are expanding, especially in middle-income countries, where they are reaching more people. More mothers are surviving childbirth, and more children are living beyond their 5th birthday. Education access is broadening, creating new pathways for our young people. The number of girls who are in school and studying STEM subjects is higher than ever before. Countries are investing in better data and technology for policies to reach the furthest behind. There are promised investments in digital connectivity and clean energy to serve in the most remote of our areas. Meanwhile, the world has united behind an ambitious global agreement to confront deep-seated structural challenges and unlock faster, more inclusive progress. The Pact for the Future, adopted last September, builds on existing reforms and commitments and charts a bold way forward to revive multilateralism and collective action, anchored in peace, in solidarity, and cooperation. The 4th International Conference on Financing for Development in Sevilla renewed our commitment to deliver on the Addis Ababa Action Agenda, take forward debt solutions, and tackle the international financial architecture. The Ocean Conference in Nice generated important consensus on critical issues, from marine protected areas to plastic pollution, illegal fishing, and maritime security. The 30th anniversary of the 4th World Conference on Women and the adoption of the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action, Beijing Plus 30, and the 25th anniversary of the Women, Peace and Security Agenda have reignited political drive for gender equality and women's empowerment. And there are so many opportunities this year to push our agenda forward. The second stocktake of the UN Food System Summit, the second World Summit on Social Development, the biannual Summit on Finance, COP30, and ahead of that, new, updated, and economy-wide national determining contributions to get our climate goals back on track. Excellencies, friends, we have to build on these achievements, make the most of the momentum, and drive action, particularly through this high-level political forum. We're under pressure because the truth is expectations are really high, trust is eroding, and crisis is deepening everywhere as we strive to deliver on the promise of our 2030 agenda. This forum is an important opportunity to reflect, to exchange, and to course correct. It is our space to amplify the momentum, share the lessons and good practice, deepen our partnerships, reignite our collective ambition to fulfill the promise of the Sustainable Development Goals. Over the coming days, we must reflect honestly and constructively on progress, particularly on SDG 3, on health and well-being, SDG 5 on gender equality and women's empowerment, and SDG 8 on decent work and economic growth, SDG 14 on life below water, and SDG 17 on partnerships and the means of implementation. This all with human rights at the center of everything that we do and in what we attain to achieve. We must focus on the theme of this year's meeting, inclusive solutions based on science and evidence, and take heed of the key findings of the Secretary-General's report on the SDGs. We need durable solutions that address persistent challenges that can be adapted and applied across diverse contexts, and that improve lives of the billions of people who are being left behind. The 800 million people living in extreme poverty, the 2.2 billion people without safe drinking water, the 2.3 billion suffering food insecurity, and the 3.4 billion people without safely managed sanitation. Countless women, indigenous peoples, smallholder farmers, and other marginalized groups unable to access formal health and protection systems. Excellencies, this forum will also welcome the 10th set of voluntary national reviews, RVNRs. They represent a temperature check of every country's journey. Since 2016, we've had a total of 190 countries that have conducted close to 400 VNRs. This voluntary national exercise has been almost universally adopted. It is a heartening sign of the commitment to the 2030 Agenda and the SDGs, and evidence that the SDGs are now woven into national plans, policies, and monitoring frameworks. These reviews are powerful roadmaps to achieve the SDGs and to mobilize all our stakeholders. Across regions, we have seen civil society's engagement deepen, driving progress nationally and locally. But we must build on these achievements, and we must increase and widen more space for civil society, especially at the local level. VNRs have helped build knowledge and data and offered practical ways to dismantle structural barriers that hold us back and leave many people behind, especially the elderly, those with disabilities. Over the past decade, we have inspired action through inclusive, scalable approaches that are grounded in our local realities. I look forward to the 37 VNRs that will be presented in this forum, and I encourage other countries to engage and to foster meaningful exchanges of experiences. Excellencies, friends, it is up to all of us to build on our successes and to make this forum count. We have come far, and we have even further to go if we are to honor the promises of the SDGs. The pathway to 2030 is narrowing, and the decisions we take now, where we invest, what we prioritize, and where we reform will shape development trajectories for decades to come. With 5 years to go, the Secretary-General's UN80 initiative marks a historic step to build on recent reforms and ensure that the United Nations remains a trusted agile partner, ready to tackle today's challenges and tomorrow's uncertainties, but also to drive our collective push for the 2030 agenda nationally, regionally, and globally. I thank you.
I thank the Deputy Secretary General for her address. I now invite the forum to listen to a video message from His Excellency Anatolio Dungba, Vice President of the Economic and Social Council and Permanent Representative of Equatorial Guinea to the United Nations, who will present messages from the ECOSOC systems. Please play the video.
Excelencias, distinguidos delegados,
Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, it is an honor for me to take the floor at this high-level political forum on sustainable development as Vice President of ECOSOC, responsible for discussions on coordination for 2025. We're celebrating the 80th anniversary of the United Nations. At this time, we're at a pivotal moment. The multilateral system is facing increased pressure, which jeopardizes the promises made for sustainable development. There is a renewed call for strengthening the UN and providing the UN with the essential support necessary to achieve significant results that benefits the population and the planet in a world marked by rapid developments. The debate on coordination for 2025 is an important step in this direction because it is a platform that allows us to set aside a mentality based on fragmentation and instead to guarantee coherence in policy and to bring together the collective experience of the Council and its subsidiary bodies. Excellencies, I'd like to send you an essential message, a few central points that emerge from the debate on coordination, which can inform our discussions at the high-level political forum. First of all, climate action, sustainable development, and resilience must form the central pillar of all of our political programs. Participants underscored the need for an energy transition that is just, as well as responsible use of critical minerals, strengthening oceans governance, meaningful inclusion of indigenous peoples' knowledge, as well as the leadership role played by youth at all levels of the implementation of policy. The UN Conference on Oceans in 2025, as well as COP30, represent crucial elements proving our collective determination. Secondly, investing in people through inclusion and respect for human rights. That is an imperative necessary for viable long-term prosperity. This means that we must make progress when it comes to universal health coverage. We must build social protection systems that are resilient. We must promote gender equality and guarantee access to high-quality education, including on digital skills and access to decent work. The second Global Summit on Social Development will be an important meeting for reaffirming our collective commitment to dignity, inclusion, and equality of opportunity. Thirdly, reforming the global financial architecture is crucial. Delegations called for updating mechanisms for restructuring debt, expanding access to financing on favorable conditions, and promoting more equitable decision-making within international financial institutions. The Fourth International Conference on Financing for Development represents a crucial opportunity for redefining global finance in order to truly support countries in special circumstances and to accelerate their implementation of the SDGs. Fourth, there were strong calls toward a digital transformation that would be inclusive based on facts. There's a consensus on the need to bridge the digital divide, to strengthen the digital capacity of the public sector, and to ensure that AI and other emerging technologies can be managed in an ethical, responsible way. Data governance was indicated as being an essential area in which UN ought to play a leadership role in accordance with the Global Digital Compact. Fifthly, we broadly recognize the fact that strategic planning and long-term planning ought to be integrated in a cross-cutting way in the work of the UN and its entities. To attain the SDGs and to be prepared for external challenges, we need governance based on anticipation. We need an intersectoral vision as well as a resolve to act in the face of emerging risks and opportunities. This is the role of ECOSOC and its subsidiary bodies. Ladies and gentlemen, it's more important today than ever to establish a link between science, policy, and practice to translate global ambitions into at the national level and to maintain multilateral cooperation that is based on inclusion, fact-based data, and long-term vision. We should make use of opportunities to take action in a unified way to make this year a real turning point toward transformation. Thank you.
I thank the Vice President of ECOSOC for presenting messages from the ECOSOC system. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, with this, that concludes the opening segment. As we take a short break for the stage to be rearranged for the town hall meeting, I invite participants to view a video on countdown to 2030, advancing the global goals together.
The High-level Political Forum in July will play a crucial role in contributing to the follow-up of the Summit of the Future and its Pact for the Future. It will draw on the experience of countries conducting voluntary national reviews, offering a barometer of progress towards the SDGs.
The sound you hear is the ticking clock. We are in the final countdown to limit global temperature rise to 1.5 degrees Celsius. And time is not on our side.
Multilateralism can still deliver, and we can still solve global problems through the collective resolve and solidarity.
Excellencies, distinguished delegates, I invite the forum to begin considerations of item 2 of its agenda entitled Advancing Sustainable, Inclusive, Science and Evidence-Based Solutions for the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and its Sustainable Development Goals for Leaving No One Behind. The forum will now begin the town hall meeting on unlocking means of implementations, mobilizing financing and STI for the SDGs. I first invite Mr. Lee Chin-hua, Under-Secretary General for Economic and Social Affairs, to present the report of the Secretary General on progress towards the Sustainable Development Goals is contained in document E/2025/62. Please.
Mr. President, Excellencies, distinguished delegates, dear colleagues, I'm pleased to present the Secretary General's 2025 Progress Report on Sustainable Development Goals. This report marks a decade of the implementation of transformative 2030 Agenda. It reveals that only 35% of the SDG targets are on track or making moderate progress. Nearly half are moving too slowly, and alarmingly, 18% are in reverse. While the progress has been uneven, notable achievements across the regions and countries demonstrate that the change is possible. Allow me to highlight a few examples. Millions have gained access to essential services. For the first time, more than half of the world's population is now covered by at least one social protection benefit. We have seen a significant decline in child marriage, and the maternal and the child mortality rates have fallen. An additional 110 million children and youth have entered school, with rising completion rates at all levels. More young people, especially girls, are also completing school. Women's representation in parliaments has increased to 27%, up from the 22% in 2015. 45 countries have achieved universal electricity access in the past decade, and the access to clean cooking has expanded globally. Internet connectivity has increased by 70%, opening new avenues for young people, communities, civil society, and the local leaders to deliver on the SDGs. Despite these important gains, the convergence of the conflicts, climate chaos, geopolitical tensions, and economic shocks continue to obstruct progress at the pace and scale needed to meet our 2030 commitments. We face a global development emergency with unprecedented challenges across the multiple fronts. Over 800 million people remained trapped in extreme poverty. Carbon dioxide levels has reached the highest point in over 2 million years, with 2024 being the hottest year on the record, surpassing the 1.5 degree threshold. Peace and security have deteriorated significantly, with more than 120 million people forcibly displaced from their homes, more than double the number in 2015. Debt servicing costs in low and middle income countries reached a record of $1.4 trillion, squeezing the resources vital for sustainable development. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, this report is more than a story in numbers. It is, above all, a call to action. We must pivot from the assessment to bold and ambitious action in 6 critical areas of SDG transitions: food systems, energies, digital connectivity, education, jobs and social protection, and climate and biodiversity. The 2030 agenda remains achievable, but the window of the opportunity is closing. Building on momentum of the 2023 SDG Summit and the 2024 Pact for the Future, we must leverage the key milestones of the 2025, including the 4th International Conference on Financing for Development, the High-level Political Forum, the 2nd UN Food Systems Summit, and the 2nd World Summit for Social Development. The 2025 presents critical opportunities to mobilize the political will and financing required to get the SDGs back on track. Let us act decisively now, and together to secure a sustainable and equitable future for all. Thank you.
I thank the Under-Secretary General for Economic and Social Affairs for his presentations. I'm now pleased to invite to the stage our lead speakers for the Town Hall discussion. I am pleased to welcome Mr. Robert Kirkpatrick, Chairman of the Board of the United Cities Foundation, Ms. Sanda Ojiambo, Chief Executive Officer of the UN Global Compact, and Mr. Robert Dijkgraaf, President-elect of the International Science Council. I also welcome our lead discussions. I am pleased to welcome the moderator of these discussions, Mr. Clavor Gatete, Executive Secretary of the United Nations Economic Commissions for Africa and Coordinator of the UN Regional Commissions. I now hand the floor over to the moderator and invite him to begin the discussions.
Thank you very much. I don't know if it is clear. Yes, thank you very much. As you can see, I have a very powerful panel team. 1 woman, 2 gentlemen from private sector. The woman is from private sector. The others are renowned scientists. And we just came from Spain for the FFD4. What we take from there is that the gap in terms of implementing the SDGs is still very wide. 4 trillion. And we cannot accelerate the implementation without technology, without science, without innovation. And that's why you have the team here to actually tell us how this is going to be done. Let me start with Robert Kirkpatrick, really an expert in technology. For us to be able to achieve the SDGs and accelerate it, we need technology. And that's why I'm asking him, how can digital public infrastructure transform our economies in order to accelerate the implementation of SDGs? And he can also tell us about lessons from the underserved regions and how to guide in terms of access to AI and other technologies in order to accelerate the implementation of SDGs. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Gatete. It's a pleasure to speak with all of you today, Excellencies, distinguished guests. So the funding gap identified in the compromiso is real, but the gap that concerns us more is an innovation velocity gap. Remember the days 10 years ago when the height of agility was a one-year pilot project that would produce a case study. I don't know what the world will look like 1 year from now. But what we see in cities around the world is that any innovation in an urban environment takes between 2 and 3 years to transfer to another city. And only 5% of innovations ever make it out of the city where they were created. Our mission at United Cities Foundation is to democratize the power to shape our urban future. We've spent the past 8 years working with cities, with member states, and with the United Nations on implementation of SDG 11. So the focus of our work has been on the use of data and in particular on digital twin technology. A digital twin is essentially a replica of a physical system. It could be a vehicle, it could be an entire city, made of data sufficiently accurate so that you can simulate what would happen under different conditions. If there were a flood, what would the best evacuation route be? Should we build a bridge here over the river or there, and what would the impact be on traffic flow? And there's been huge interest around the world in these kinds of technologies among cities precisely because of this innovation velocity gap. The idea that you can test hypotheses instead of pilot as a starting point. But the systems that are out there today are proprietary black box technologies. They live in the basement of City Hall. They require considerable expertise to use. And they're another example of an AI-powered tool filled with all of our personal data. So for the past 2 years, we've been working with the support of the Rockefeller Foundation, the Autodesk Foundation, and others, designing a new platform for digital twin technology called Open Twin. It is designed as the first digital twin platform to function as digital public infrastructure. Chile has offered to host the first living lab for the early prototyping and experiments around this platform. Open Twin is imagined as free and open source software, a kind of simulation-powered operating system for cities. And the important piece here is not what the technology is, but who it's for. This is a technology that is meant to be used by community groups, by local businesses, by entrepreneurs to innovate. It's not just meant to support a top-down planning process. And our view on this is that this velocity, this innovation velocity gap means we need all hands on deck. We need every resident at the table, everyone who can bring an idea, can bring data, can bring their local knowledge to bear to help solve problems. This can't be all happening from the ivory tower. It needs to be in the town square. And at the same time, this problem that we've seen where city after city is reinventing the wheel. Our vision for Open Twin is that when any one city's digital twin comes online, it will automatically federate and link to all the other cities running the software so that AI can help facilitate the transfer of knowledge. How did you implement this traffic signaling system in one city to another city where you have this impact on carbon emissions? So, our long-term view is that we envision for this digital twin environment a commons where anyone can bring data, anyone can bring free and open source tools, but also vibrant markets for data and tools and services. The idea here is to have digital public infrastructure that serves as a scaffolding to support private investment in the innovations that we're going to need to transform our cities. The compromiso calls for scaling science, technology, and innovation, but today, in the $400 billion smart city market, big tech is capturing the entire space. And cities are given an option, upload all of your data and pay us forever. Cities need to have a choice, rent or own their own infrastructure. Digital colonialism or digital democracy. We are seeking partnerships to help us build this open source free platform and of course to work with cities around the world. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, thank you very, very much for that clear explanation. As I said, we just came from Seville, and from there, we've been seeing that the gap is too large. For the whole world, $4 trillion per year, that's the required US dollars, and for Africa, 1.3 trillion per year. How do we close that kind of gap in terms of financing? And how do we also close the innovation gap that is needed, not only in developing countries, but also in the developed countries? And how do we use innovations like blended finance that is going to be making a big difference? And also, of course, scaling up the science, technology, and innovation.
In terms of access, we've seen a lot of progress in approaches to inclusion that are going to be really critical for a platform like this. I mean, one is simplicity, right? If it works for a healthcare worker in Kampala, then it will work anywhere. And this is the approach that we need to take. Working over SMS, working over platforms like WhatsApp. You can imagine an insurance company wanting to use a platform like this to model how to manage risk across 50 different cities at the same time. But you can also imagine a food truck vendor in a city texting a message to an AI in the Open Twin platform saying, I'm in this part of town. What would be the best place to park my food truck to get maximum foot traffic from potential customers? And being able to get back an answer within a minute that has factored in both a local weather forecast and a planned political event in a nearby neighborhood, right? The inclusion aspect of this is going to be incredibly critical. We definitely envision a scenario where we have this combination of essentially this commons layer and a market layer. And the idea here is that, a city can put out a call saying we need to reduce deaths from heat-related illness by 30%. Private suppliers can come in and solve the problem. The city can monitor what happens, and citizens will be able to monitor what happens and be able to bring more data and more evidence of their own and more local knowledge to bear on these types of challenges.
Yeah, thank you very much. Now let me turn to Sander. Sander, I was with you in Seville, and you are very, very active. As someone who leads the United Nations Global Compact, and knowing that there is no achievement of SDGs without a private sector, what was your take for that kind of conference, and what plans do you have in place as we move forward?
Thank you very much, Executive Secretary, my fellow panelists, and the distinguished excellencies and delegates in the audience. As the Executive Secretary has said, I represent the UN Global Compact. It's a special initiative within the United Nations. It really looks at how we can harness the power, the processes, and the operations of the private sector towards delivering on the SDGs. So as has been mentioned, I think, the Seville Financing for Development Conference, I think, was truly a watershed moment for bringing together public and private sectors around the key issue of finance. We've heard how big the gap is. We know the call to move from billions to trillions. We also know the fact that that capital exists around the world, but it exists in places where it's underinvested, ill-invested, and really the challenge is to move that financing towards where it needs to make that difference for the millions and the billions around the world. For the private sector, I think, and I'll share some reflections from our interactions at the Financing for Development Forum. I think the first was a clear recognition that international cooperation is still strong and still works. There's lots of challenges, and we've heard, what some of these roadblocks and headwinds are. But the truth is, the world did gather to deliberate and to see how to mobilize financing that was most importantly needed for the world. The second, I think, the multi-stakeholder approach of Seville was absolutely incredible. We had a significant private sector turnout, not only from private companies, but from holders of capital, be they investors, asset owners, asset managers. Absolutely important. I think three key things that I'd like to share from the private sector perspective. The first, and this is where really the multi-stakeholder platforms come to play. It is clear that there's a gap in public financing. Private sector is available not to fill the gap, but purely to innovate and invest around the opportunities in the SDGs. I think we can all recall in 2015 when the goals were articulated, there was a very clear call for the private sector to come in and invest. So that call to continue to look at what the bankable opportunities are, what the returns on investment are, is one strong call that we've heard from the private sector through this. The second, and a call that the Secretary General has echoed very widely in his deliberations, is the continued need for the reform of the international financial architecture. We know, and with a keen focus perhaps on low-income and some middle-income countries and economies, the biggest concern really around financing for development and realization of the SDGs is the cost of capital. Be that cost of capital from MDBs, be that cost of capital at the retail level, but most importantly for low-income countries, just making sure that they can access capital for the much-needed transformation and development opportunities. Lots of also discussions on debt reform and debt restructuring and debt sustainability, again, so important for investment. I think from the private sector, one of the other key calls for action was the question around credit ratings, risk, perception, and reward. Again, with relevance to perhaps low and middle income countries that don't get perhaps, I'm gonna say, the fairness or the lack of bias around what their credit ratings are. We know there's significant investment opportunities in key economies. The fact is, though sometimes the risk ratings make it seem that it's unattractive to invest, but we know there's huge opportunities there. So lots of engagement from private sector, but keen to see some of these enabling environment and systemic challenges be erased or addressed through this multi-stakeholder convening.
Yeah, thank you very much, Sanda. Well, I think the time for talking is over. We have the compact for the future. We just finished the conference in FFD4, and now we need to implement. What do you think that can be done to actually close the gap of the financing? We need money, and we need money from the private sector. And how do we really scale up the innovations that we need to do? And that one comes from the private sector. The public sector is highly indebted. It is having a lot of challenges. Now we can rely on private sector. And you are the person on behalf of the United Nations that can tell us how. Please go ahead.
Sure, indeed, it's truly time for action. A couple of key points emerged from our discussions there. I think the first was the opportunity to demystify and really unpack what the action points are around a couple of key terminologies. Blended finance, we hear about that a lot, but how do we really move it from smaller pilot initiatives to really mobilizing blended finance at scale? And I think that was a key part of our discussions, really looking at issues such as guarantees, first loss facilities, impact bonds. We know, and the statistics tell us, that every dollar or every $3, every public dollar of financing can mobilize 3 to 5 times more in terms of private financing and private capital. So really looking at what we need to do to, again, to create that environment where private sector capital can be attracted, is guaranteed, there's sanctity of contract, there's a strong return on investment, and there's a clear bankable path towards moving it forward. So that, I think, was one of the first and one of the biggest requirements. The second was also an understanding and an agreement that there are enough bankable projects. I think there's a myth that persists, that we don't know what to do, we don't know where the projects and initiatives were. I think from the platform of action, over 130 projects and even more were listed. What we do need to do is make sure we can do better matchmaking, the public and private coming together, the understanding of what we want to do collectively as big projects. The third real element, I think, was truly the continued opportunity to dialogue. Our private sector participants say that they're very keen to support the SDGs, not at the tail end of initiatives that are initiated by public sector, but at the beginning. So a true call for co-creation, for understanding financing models, for making sure that there's an enabling environment. Policy regulation, regulatory coherence was also so important. Where there's no scale, which is often sometimes the challenge in low-income countries and SIDS, the importance of having regulatory coherence across jurisdictions and across financing mechanisms was absolutely important. But there is the opportunity and a strong commitment that we got from Seville to have private sector truly engage in this agenda.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for that. Now, we are going to another Robert Dykegraph. who is also a very top scientist, and his scientists always have a formula for how to address problems like the challenges we are having. So now, can you tell us again, from your own perspective, how to really narrow down this gap, the financing gap? What kind of innovations? And at the same time, since you are a scientist, we want to understand really the application of science into accelerating the SDGs, because we are only left with 5 years to go.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair, and dear excellencies and distinguished delegates. Great honor to be here on the stage and represent the global science community on behalf of the International Science Council. And I like to say that science and technology innovation are our most reliable source for optimism, because we can learn things, we can discover things, and knowledge is the only natural resource that actually grows when you use it and share it. But it's good to realize that there's not only a finance gap, there's also an innovation gap, because does all that wonderful science and research actually deliver the results that we need? And I think here there are two observations. I think the first one is that, as to say, the world has problems and science has disciplines, and often they do not match. And too much research is done in silos, and not enough incentives are in the system to actually stimulate transdisciplinary research. And I think there are vast opportunities there to really reform science as it is. The second element, I think, is that, as already was mentioned by two of my co-panelists, that in order to close the innovation gap, we should also have science that really is co-designed, co-produced with the people that actually will use that knowledge. So we are a great advocate for mission-driven transdisciplinary research, where from the very beginning you work together with local communities, whether it's cities or businesses, that actually shape the research agenda. And also increase, I would say, the absorptive power of societies, of governments to actually, receive and engage with the knowledge. Now, in the Compromisos Vida, I think offers a wonderful opportunity to, in some sense, reset not only the financial instruments, but make the whole innovation chain from the very beginning part of the financial models. And if I would recommend two things that we can do different, is to build in rewards, incentives that actually actively stimulate this transdisciplinary kind of research. It's done not enough. And the second element would be to really also stimulate multilateral cooperation. I think it's incredibly important. Often I think we see those member states that have to make the toughest decision have the least resources and capacity to be informed. And here I think international collaboration can work. I would say the spirit of science is truly a universal collaborative spirit. And this idea that the whole can be more than the sum of the parts is really, I would say, part of our presence and everything we do. So it's very much aligned also with the multilateral system. So I see tremendous opportunities for the next 5 years to close that innovation gap. And again, not only by presenting the science, but also reforming the science system as it is.
You've actually answered so much, and definitely even for my next question. But I wanted just to see, now that we have the Global Digital Compact, we have the science, technology, and innovation, and innovative financing mechanisms, like, are there anything that institutionally can be done, like institutional innovations that can be done? Because some can be done by the private sector, others by scientists, but we need, and you mentioned a very important point of international cooperation. But here we are coming to institutional now innovations.
Yeah, I think, Mr. Chair, there are many things that can be done. I think we definitely can also strengthen the national science advisory system. So science policy is an important element. Is there enough capacity in governments, in local actors to actually work with the science system? I think we can, in the regional and global multilateral platforms, we can integrate science more to affect the SDG implementation. And you already mentioned the Global Compact, and it was also envisioned in the Global Digital Compact. It's very important what we call open science infrastructure, which not only means sharing data, but sharing all the products of science and having this open, democratic way of reshaping science is absolutely kind of essential, because then actually it becomes this global common good, which I think is really our mission.
No, thank you very much. In the interest of time, I think we have to be very fast. I think we've heard so much from each of the speakers, how they intend to contribute to the solution for accelerating the SDGs. We've heard about, of course, previously the Pact for the Future, the reform of the global financial architecture that is still ongoing, including, of course, addressing the issues of debt, that is the debt overhang, which is still serious for developing countries, the Global Digital Compact, the science, technology, and innovation, and especially investing in research, in science and research, not only by member countries, but also by the global community. We've also had the outcome of the FFD4 and also the importance of the domestic resource mobilization, the taxation. Every country has to make a contribution. But we've had also the role of the private sector in this acceleration process. The issues of blended finance, the risking, the PPPs, and also, as mentioned by Robert, the international collaboration, which is very, very critical. We also need to share experiences from different regions on what is working and what can be accelerated. So really, I thank you very much for your contribution. And now we are coming to the discussants. We have Ms. Emilia Reyes, Program Director of Policies and Budgets for Equality and Sustainable Development at Equidad de Janeiro. I hope I said it right. And then we have Marcia Barbosa, Professor of Physics at the Federal University of Rio Grande do Sul from Brazil. So Ms. Emilia Reyes, please go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Gatete, and good morning, everybody in this room. Yes, I'm Emilia Reyes, and my organization is called Equidad de Género, Ciudadanía, Trabajo y Familia. I'm actually here representing the civil society FFD mechanism, and we're just coming back from Sevilla. To tell you the truth, we are actually very disappointed in the outcomes. We feel that there was no real ambition in the Compromiso de Sevilla to reform the international financial architecture. To us, it was a lost opportunity to really change and deliver for what is needed for people and the planet. We actually see that the business as usual framework was ratified, and it is bringing genocidal and ecocidal impacts across the world. We are actually very concerned because we see that there are only 5 more years to fulfill the 2030 agenda, and we are ratifying what has been done for the past 10 years, and that failed so far. So going in the same direction for the next 5 years is a really deeply flawed strategy. If you recall, in 2018, the Human Rights Rapporteur on Poverty and Human Rights stated very clearly that private investments are one of the strongest factors to deepen the violations of human rights. And so without any analytical framing to just push for more private investments without actually regulation is very concerning, and that is what we see across the document of the Compromiso de Sevilla. And the SDGs are a public agenda. Without public resources, these will not be fulfilled. And so we need to end austerity, to ratify our commitment to public services, to social protection, human rights, gender equality, and ecological integrity. This can only be achieved by a strong commitment to public resources. And we think that we need to trust the FFD potential to change the international, the sexual, and the racial division of labor. These are structural transformations that are needed in the current economic system, and the FFD agenda in all of the chapters hold the key to do that. So for us, the UN Framework Convention on Tax Cooperation, the UN Framework Convention on Sovereign Debt, and the UN Framework Convention on International Development Corporations could unlock the possibilities for enhancing public investments that are very much needed. Sadly, what we saw in the negotiations in FFD was that the developed countries, especially the wealthy countries, were blocking any possibility of ambition, ratifying their status quo, ratifying their privileges and their power. And so we were, despite calling, for instance, also on the private agenda, for instance, the regulation of the credit rating agencies, or even tackling the impacts of investor-state dispute settlements, and none of this happened, and we are very sad with all of the missed opportunities. So I think for us, what follows is that we will not give up. We think that the FFD has a lot of promises, and we will come back every year. But also we want to encourage the G70 countries to pursue these conventions and strengthening these conventions in the General Assembly level. We will be right by your side in trying to promote a more fair, just, equal world for people and the planet. Thank you so much.
No. Yeah, thank you very much, Emilia. Thank you very much, and you've heard the clapping as an indication of what you have said. Now let's come to Marcia Barbosa. Professor, please.
Thank you, Excellencies. I am Professor Marcia Barbosa, Rector of Universidade Federal do Rio Grande do Sul in Brazil, representing the Scientific and Technological Community Major Group. Despite the alarming slow rate of progress on the 2030 agenda, the outcomes of the 4th International Conference on Finance and Development have given us reason to hope. The Compromiso of Sevilla underscores that now is time for action. As this year HLPF team suggests, successful action requires meaningful and sustainable engagement of science, engineering, technology, and innovation, but open and rich in listening to the public. We scientists and engineers are stepping up to help to address these huge challenges from biodiversity, human health, digital transformation, disaster resilience, and quantum computation. We are developing the knowledge together with the communities, the tools, and the collaborations needed to address complex and systemic challenges. But progress is not given. While scientific and technological capabilities have never been stronger, united, and together working, they remain underutilized by decision makers. Science built with the community, open science, needs to be heard and implemented. The Compromiso of Sevilla provides a timely opportunity to align global communities with actions. By embedding STI more systematically into financing frameworks, we can move from aspirations to reality. Closing the gap is not optional. With only 5 years remaining, we are rapidly approaching the point where the cost of inaction, of doing nothing, will far overrate the cost of coordinated investment and evidence-informed solutions. Connecting scientific and engineering knowledge with public institutions, with the people, communities, and policy frameworks is essential and has to happen now. We therefore use stronger investment in systems, in relationships that enable science and engineers to contribute to meaningful, inclusive, and open sustainable development. We also use member states and multilateral systems partners in the scientific and engineers community as source of insights, solutions, and models for mobilizing financing the SDGs as outlined by the major groups HLPF position paper. We, scientists and engineers, listen to the community, stand ready to support member states to implement open, sustainable, inclusive, science and evidence-based solutions for the 2030 agenda, leaving no one behind. Together, and only together, we can. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You have heard from our lead speakers and our lead discussants. They didn't come with money to support the SDGs, but I think they came with good ideas I want all of you to join me in terms of thanking our discussants and our speakers here today. Thank you so much.
I thank the moderator for conducting the panel discussions and the panelists for their excellent contributions. We will now proceed to the interactive discussions. Delegations wishing to intervene are invited to request the floor by pressing the button on the microphone console now. I also take the opportunity to remind participants that the time limit for intervention from the floor is 3 minutes. Please bear in mind that the time limit may need to be adjusted downwards depending on the number of requests for the floor. To ensure proper interpretations, delegations are asked to speak at a normal pace and to provide a written copy of their statements by email to e-statements@un.org. Full versions of the longer interventions can be submitted to the Secretariat. With this, now I first give the floor to the ministerial respondent, Mr. Fahd Al-Sulaiti, Director General of the Qatar Fund for Development. And you have the floor now.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, Excellencies, and ladies and gentlemen. It's an honor to be here today in this important discussion to discuss how can we better mobilize financing and innovating to achieve sustainable development goals. I thank the organizer and the follower for this panelists of their inputs. With just 5 years beyond the SDGs 2030, we need to actually discuss how can we close the gap as being discussed today early morning, especially the lack of the funding and equal to access for technology and innovation. We as the state of Qatar, we believe the funding and innovation must work together. We cannot make real progress without this both. We focus on making a support of go further beyond using unlock and others resources, blended skills, and strengthening long system and sustainable solutions. There are 3 areas we believe deserve priorities as we discuss on FFD4 and civil. First, we must empower country, especially for the LDC, to lead their own development. This means that investing in local ideas, technology, and utilizing the natural resources. Second, we must leverage blending financing, not just a funding mechanism, but also as a tool for inclusion. Third, we must make funding more accessible and affordable, especially for low-income countries. If we are serious about leaving no one behind, we must also ensure no ideas left behind and no countries left without tools that needed to be success, especially on the financing and reducing the financing burden. As Qatar, we are committed to working together with all for this to close the gap and creating real ideas. Thank you so much.
I thank the Director General of Qatar Fund for Development. I now give the floor to Her Excellency Sanni Grahn Lassonen, Minister of Social Security of Finland. Your Excellency, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. I have the honor to deliver the statement on behalf of the member states of the UN LGBTI core group. The core group's goal is to promote universal respect for the human rights and freedoms of all individuals, regardless of sexual orientation, gender identity, or sex characteristics. We focus particularly on protecting LGBTI persons from violence and discrimination. The 2030 Agenda's core principle, leave no one behind, cannot be achieved without the inclusion of LGBTI persons in all areas of development. Inclusive, gender-responsive, and targeted financing is essential to ensure that marginalized groups, including LGBT LGBTI persons are not excluded from the development policies. This year, HLPF theme emphasizes sustainable, inclusive, and evidence-based solutions for the Agenda 2030 and the SDGs on leaving no one behind. As we review health, gender equality, decent work, life below water, and partnerships, we stress the need for human rights-based, intersectional, and community-centered approaches. Allow me to mention some specific challenges LGBTI persons face. SDG 3, LGBTI persons face unique health inequalities and barriers to accessing healthcare due to stigma and discrimination. While 53 countries protect lesbian, bisexual, and gay persons, and 38 protect trans individuals in health settings, global coverage remains insufficient. SDG number 5, discrimination and violence against LGBTI persons persist. Over 60 countries criminalize same-sex relationships, exposing individuals to arrest, blackmail, and violence. In at least 6 countries, such relationships are punishable by death. SDG number 8, LGBTI persons often face employment discrimination. Although 78 countries offer legal protection, many workplaces remain unsafe and unequal. Ensuring equal employment opportunities would contribute to broader economic development. The UN LGBTI core group remains committed to supporting the HLPF and advocating for policies that uphold the rights and dignity of all people, including LGBTI persons. We are not asking for special rights, only for equal rights and inclusion in a just and sustainable future. Thank you very much.
I thank Her Excellency, the Minister of Social Security of Finland. Now I give the floor to the distinguished representative of Croatia, to be followed by the distinguished representative of Russian Federation.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President of ECOSOC. We also thank the Undersecretary General for Economic and Social Affairs, Mr. Lee Jun-Kwa, for his presentation of the SDG Progress Report. Fellow delegates, we must acknowledge that the situation is and remains concerning. With progress made on only 35% of the 137 SDG targets, and just 4 years left until 2030, the urgency is clear. Without decisive, accelerated action, we risk falling dramatically short of the commitments we made in 2015 and reaffirmed at 2 SDG summits since. This is why the Sevilla commitment is of crucial importance. Croatia was proud to serve as Vice President of the conference, reaffirming our strong support for ending poverty, hunger, and inequality. As our Foreign Minister stated in Sevilla, bold commitments and fresh ideas are essential. We must modernize governance, innovate funding mechanisms, and prioritize inclusiveness. Success will require deepened cooperation. We must forge broad, multi-stakeholder partnerships that bring together governments, public development banks, the private sector, civil society, and international organizations. And Croatia speaks from experience, having undergone a transformation from being a recipient of development assistance to becoming a dedicated provider. But our contributions go beyond financial aid. We stand ready to share our knowledge and experience generously, and we look forward to continuing this commitment through our active membership in ECOSOC starting in 2026, and we thank all the countries that place their trust in us. Thank you, Mr. Vice President.
Distinguished representative of Croatia. Now I give the floor to the distinguished representative of Russian Federation, to be followed by the distinguished representative of Norway. Russian Federation, you have the floor.
Distinguished President, the global economy is undergoing a profound transformation, accompanied by a rise in geopolitical tensions, market volatility, and the fragmentation of production and logistics chains. These processes are the most keenly felt in the most vulnerable countries. It is more urgent than ever to strengthen and expand partnerships between states, development banks, the private sector, the scientific community, and civil society. It is only through combined efforts and through mobilizing large-scale investments that we can get back on the right track toward attaining the 2030 Agenda. To promote the goals of the 2030 Agenda, it's important to rethink the global financial architecture. It must be fair, inclusive, transparent, and depoliticized, reflecting the interests of all countries, especially developing countries, and be based on the principles of equality and mutual respect. In this regard, we welcome the adoption of the Seville Commitment, which sets up an updated architecture of global cooperation in the area of development financing. We view this as an important step towards developing the agreements begun by the Monterrey Consensus, the Doha Declaration, and further reinforced in the Addis Ababa Program of Action. Russia is working with partners in BRICS and other associations in order to create a more sustainable, reliable, and just global financial system to expand trade, promote joint investment initiatives in the areas of infrastructure, energy, and cutting-edge technologies. To reduce the technological gap suffered by developing countries, we're supporting them in strengthening their scientific capacity, training personnel, stimulating exchange and cutting-edge experience and technologies. We believe that widespread adoption of artificial intelligence and other ICTs will help promote economic development in global South countries. Russia calls on all countries, all partners, to join us in developing this new, reliable, and sustainable global development model based on equality, mutual respect, and common interests. Thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of Russian Federation. Now I give the floor to the distinguished representative of Norway, to be followed by Together 2030 Stakeholder Group. Norway, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Financing of the SDGs is far below what we should tolerate as a global community. Inequality is growing both within and between countries. At a time of uncertainty in financial markets, declining ODA, and rising mistrust, we are at a critical juncture for sustainable development. As co-facilitator of the 4th International Conference on Financing for Development, Norway has been committed to an inclusive and transparent process, one that rebuilds trust and delivered a forward-looking and balanced outcome. The Compromiso de Sevilla sends a clear and timely message. The global community remains committed to financing the Sustainable Development Goals and upholding international cooperation and multilateralism despite global uncertainty. Norway exceeds 1% of GNI and ODA and encourages all countries, including emerging economies, to contribute according to their capacity. However, ODA is under pressure, and ODA in itself is not enough. It is therefore more important than ever to use existing financing efficiently and mobilize all sources of finance, public and private, domestic and international, traditional and innovative. We're also very happy to see anti-corruption and financial integrity as cross-cutting priorities in the FFT4 agenda. The Compromiso de Sevilla is an important milestone. The future will judge us by how we carry it forward. Let us work together to deliver the means and the momentum to achieve the world we promised in 2015. Thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of Norway. Now I give the floor to the distinguished representative of Together 2030 Stakeholder Group, to be followed by the distinguished representative of Nepal.
Thank you, Chair. In partnership with Together 2030, I deliver this statement on behalf of the Transparency, Accountability, and Participation Network, a global network of over 500 civil society organizations working to build more peaceful, just, and inclusive societies. As highlighted in the 2025 Rome Civil Society Declaration on SDG 16+, today, the number of armed conflicts globally is at its highest since the end of the Cold War, and in 2024, global military expenditure increased to $2.7 trillion US. We cannot discuss the means of implementation for the SDGs without addressing this elephant in the room. Rapid growth in military spending amid mass atrocities and flagrant violations of international law, set against the backdrop of persistent and growing shortfall in ODA commitments. These misaligned priorities undermine sustainable development and efforts to build more peaceful and just societies. It is imperative that governments fulfill their 0.7% ODA commitments and ensure that all aid is transparently allocated to genuine development initiatives without being diluted or diverted to unrelated costs such as military expenditure. Further, while technology has the potential to close information gaps and access gaps, it also holds the potential to bolster the already alarming rise in authoritarianism, misinformation, disinformation, and attacks on democratic institutions. In many countries, anti-democratic trends are shrinking civic space, stifling dissent, and undermining trust and participation needed for peaceful and inclusive societies. It is therefore critical that governments prioritize people-centered financing and technological development with the primary objective of facilitating meaningful inclusion and engagement of civil society actors and communities, namely those most marginalized. Many local and grassroots organizations are operating in increasingly hostile environments while facing massive financial strain due to funding cuts and shifting donor priorities. These actors are the closest to the ground and best positioned to understand and address local needs, but often the least funded and most at risk. Resourcing grassroots civil society is an urgently needed investment in building resilient, equitable, and just societies. Thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of Together 2030 Stakeholder Group. Now I give the floor to the distinguished representative of Nepal, to be followed by distinguished representative of Ghana.
Thank you, Chair. The SDG reflect our shared vision for a just, inclusive, and sustainable future. Yet with only 5 years left until 2030, and the world is far off track. The SDG financing gap has surged $4.2 trillion annually. In Nepal, achieving the SDG requires an investment of 23 billion USD per annum, which is 45% of GDP. Out of this amount, 11% of GDP remain in the financial gap. The Sevilla commitment from the FFD4 and the Global Digital Compact provide vital framework to bridge these divides. Nepal urges prompt and full implementation of these commitments. On this, let me highlight the 5 points. First, ODA must increase and align with national priority. Second, the private sector investment must be innovative financing mechanism. Third, accelerating access to climate finance is must. And fourth, bridging the digital technology divides demand global cooperation to technology transfer, especially in agriculture, energy, and public services. Fifth, investing in institutional and human capacity is key SDG progress. And strengthening, planning, monitoring, and data system building, public sector capacity, and investing in STEM education, digital skill, and innovation leadership will drive progress. In conclusion, we need to match ambition with action by mobilizing financing skill, at scale, and accelerating innovation. We must act with urgency and unite to unlock the means of implementation so that no country is left behind. Thank you.
So thank you. I thank the distinguished representative of Nepal. Now I give the floor to distinguished representative of France, to be followed by the distinguished representative of Uganda.
Monsieur le Président.
Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen, the Institute of Research for Development, on behalf of which I am speaking, believes that the relevance and effectiveness of the transformation needed to attain the SDGs by 2030 are based on science, innovation, and technology. To accompany the transformation of societies toward social, economic, and environmental models that are more just and sustainable, this needs to be multidisciplinary and based on in an equitable way. The knowledge produced by research must be accessible to all, and scientific activity should be further designed and produced within low-income countries. These issues should guide our action at a time when AI is causing a paradigm change and represents a promising acceleration toward attaining the SDGs. We can see the effect in the scientific work we're doing on the Climate Forward Conference on Climate Change, studying terrestrial and marine biodiversity and transformation of our societies. The deployment of this research and AI must be done in a responsible and ethical way. We must remain vigilant to make sure that AI does not exacerbate social, economic, cultural, and scientific inequalities on a global level, but rather that they constitute a tool for building a more just world. One of the priorities affirmed during the summit on AI that took place in Paris in February reduced a conclusion as follows. The two issues are most important. First of all, we must avoid systemic biases and represent the interests of all so that we can create AI models based on data and knowledge coming from specific territories and peoples. And we also believe that AI representative only if all data is open source. Secondly, accessibility for the largest number of people to AI tools and development tools is crucial for combating the digital divide in practice. We must pursue an inclusive, open, multi-party approach to strengthen capacity and reduce inequality. Lastly, the IRD recalls the importance of carrying out research through equitable partnerships in order to foster production and use of data in the South and inclusion of that data in AI models. Thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of France. Now I give the floor to the distinguished representative of Uganda, to be followed by South Africa.
Your Excellency, the Chairperson, distinguished guests, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, to address the financing challenge, Uganda on its part has institutionalized platforms such as the National Partnership Forum and the Local Development Partners Group. These have enhanced our coordination, our accountability, and alignment of partner support with our national priorities. The role of public development banks cannot be overemphasized. In order to fully exploit their potential, Uganda Development Bank and other sister institutions have been instrumental in providing affordable financing for businesses. In addition, Mr. Chairman, empowering communities through targeted programs such as the Parish Development Model, EMIOGA, Agricultural Credit Facility, Youth Livelihood, and the new large-scale financing farmer group have done tremendous work in financing SDGs at community level. Uganda is also ensuring access to global capital, such as foreign direct investment, remittances, bonds and loans, which are vital in financing development in the low and middle-income countries. Uganda continues to benefit from its diaspora, who remitted over $1 billion in the last year. Due to conducive policies, our FDI has doubled over the last 5 years. Uganda is also promoting policy frameworks that create enabling environment at all levels for investment in sustainable development goals. This is including, but not limited to, public investment financing strategy, which is hinged on integrated national financing framework. Mr. Chairman, we are also developing capital markets, including both public and private markets and domestic investment vehicles to boost and promote long-term financing for local businesses. We are also harnessing financing for climate resilience through institutional climate finance. Your Excellence, science, technology, and innovations have also benefited from various initiatives, including research for local scientists and adoption. Mr. Chairman, I submit.
I thank the distinguished representative of Uganda. Now I give the floor to distinguished representative of South Africa, to be followed by Ghana.
Mr. Vice President, distinguished delegates, South Africa welcomes the Compromiso de Sevilla, which was adopted by consensus at the recently concluded Financing for Development IV conference. The outcome document holds the promise of making significant inroads into both the internal and external components of the $4 trillion Sustainable Development Financing Gap. It contains a host of practical solutions and actions that, taken together, could help to reshape the global financial system in support of the implementation of the SDGs. Chair, on science and technology, the outcome document recognizes the importance of enabling environments at all levels, including enabling regulatory and governance frameworks in nurturing science, innovation, and the dissemination of technologies. To ensure the full benefit of emerging technologies to all of society, the outcome document further advocates for the development and implementation of country-led national innovation strategies, including STI for SDG roadmaps and national roadmaps for digitalization. However, as good as these intentions and agreements are, we need to follow through with its implementation and enhance meaningful cooperation towards this purpose. Chair, with a view to foster greater multilateral cooperation towards enhancing sustainable development and accelerating the achievement of the SDGs, South Africa has, as President of the G20, identify equity in science and innovation-based approaches to sustainable development as the theme for the G20 Research and Innovation Working Group. This theme is supported by the following three key priority areas: open innovation for development, biodiversity for sustainable development, and diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility in science, technology, and innovation. Through these priorities, South Africa aims to improve the use of science and technology to address global challenges, promote science, technology, and innovation and international cooperation for sustainable development, share knowledge, experiences, and best practices, and reduce gaps in access to and production of science, technology, and innovation. Chair, in conclusion, South Africa conveys its appreciation to you for convening this panel and for the crucial decision we make in terms of how to follow up on the FFD4. These decisions will determine whether the SDGs are salvaged or slip beyond our grasp. I thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of South Africa. Now I give the floor to the distinguished representative of Ghana, to be followed by Philippines. Ghana, you have the floor.
Thank you, Your Excellency, for the opportunity. We've taken note of a number of gaps, specifically two gaps mentioned, the financing gap and the innovation gap, and I can assure you that on both fronts, we've been making progress in terms of tax reforms, for example, that lead to equitable impact of tax policies so that the poor are not disproportionately affected, while at the same time strengthening the government's agenda to increase the tax revenue, tax GDP ratio, which is a major objective of development policy at the moment. But we're also focusing on local economic development as a key driver of national economic development, that without adequate strategies and policies in place to promote local economic development and tap into latent local sources of financing, we will definitely face challenges in overall financing strategies at the national level. With respect to innovation, we recently launched a $1 billion innovation hub that's going to drive Ghana's development policy in several fronts in terms of education, health delivery, human resource development, and so forth. So this is also a major priority for us. But there's a third gap that I haven't heard anything about that I think we need to avert our minds to, which is the productivity gap, not just in Ghana, but it's a gap that exists between rich and poor countries. And it's important for us to remind ourselves of the illusion of plenty, that merely getting more financial resources may not necessarily lead to improved development outcomes, that we need to embark on some sort of a productivity revolution, both in the public and private sectors. In the case of Ghana, we are working very closely with the Management Development and Productivity Institute to achieve this particular objective, and we are ready to share the lessons that we acquired so far with our fellow countries. Thank you very much.
I thank the distinguished representative of Ghana. Now I give the floor to the distinguished representative of Philippines, to be followed by international development law organizations. Philippines, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Excellencies, esteemed delegates, ladies and gentlemen, mabuhay and warm greetings from the Philippines. The Philippines remains active in implementing the Addis Ababa Action Agenda, recognizing that financing the SDGs demands nothing short of a bold, inclusive, and coordinated response. We are pursuing a coherent national financing framework that taps public, private, and international sources while aligning resources with our SDG targets. As part of this effort, we have implemented the foundational elements of the Integrated National Financing Framework into our national government planning, budgeting, and infrastructure monitoring to ensure effective financing and service delivery. We noted that the Fourth International Conference on Financing for Development, or FFD4, highlighted the role of science, technology, and innovation as a catalyst for inclusive and sustainable development. In fact, the Philippines has already taken steps to build a dynamic innovation ecosystems, the strategies for which are outlined in our Philippine Development Plan 2023 to 2028, and in greater detail in the National Innovation Agenda and Strategy Document 2023 to 2032. Building a dynamic innovation ecosystem begins with ensuring that we have a continuing pool of innovation actors, from R&D scientists, design engineers, product developers, and social scientists. Already, we have been offering scholarships for STEM, vocational training, and inclusive education, which were also emphasized in the FFD4. Next, we need to build credible platforms and safe spaces for collaboration, infrastructure to translate ideas to innovations, and mechanisms to connect innovations to the market. Financing is integrated in this entire innovation cycle. Right now, we are financing it from domestic sources, but we hope that soon our innovation ecosystem would benefit from external financing and partnerships. With 5 years to go, we need innovations to accelerate inclusive, resilient, and technology-enabled progress towards the SDG. Let us keep building a future that works for everyone, powered by science, driven by solidarity. Maraming salamat. Thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of Philippines. Now I give the floor to the distinguished representative of International Development Law Organization, to be followed by Colombia.
Thank you, Mr. President. It is a pleasure to join you on behalf of the International Development Law Organization. My message is simple. Investing in the rule of law, as embodied in SDG 16, can mobilize financing for innovation, science, technology, and justice for women and girls, advancing progress across the entire 2030 agenda. Drawing on IDLO's experience in some 100 countries over the last 40 years, allow me to share 3 examples particularly relevant for this year's goals under review. First, the rule of law encourages economic growth by helping countries attract and sustainably manage investment. Paragraph 32 of the Sevilla Commitment reaffirms its critical role in creating enabling environments for investment. IDLO supports governments to promote sustainable growth by simplifying regulations, resolving complex disputes, and strengthening capacity to negotiate and implement investment agreements. We also work with civil society and engage the private sector, including through innovative public-private partnerships, such as IDLO's support program for least developed countries, which provide tailored support on investment-related matters. Secondly, the rule of law is a powerful tool for promoting access to health services. IDLO works at the nexus of health, development, and the rule of law to promote access to health services, support pandemic preparedness, and strengthen capacity to prevent and manage non-communicable diseases. Third, the rule of law is also essential in advancing both rights and equal opportunity for women and girls. IDLO works to eliminate discriminatory laws and develop legal and institutional frameworks that promote access to justice for all and empower women and girls to claim their rights. I look forward to moderating tomorrow's session on SDG 5, where we will further explore these and other key themes. Mr. President, IDLO is committed to collaborating with all partners to promote peace and prosperity, unlock development potential, strengthen trust, and promote human rights for all through the rule of law. Thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of IDLO, and now I give the floor to the distinguished representative of Colombia, to be followed by Poland. Colombia, you have the floor.
Gracias, señor presidente.
Thank you, sir. Colombia underscores the importance of reflecting about the challenges and opportunities for financing for development in the framework of the 2030 Agenda. We believe in the urgent need to build coherent finance frameworks that are coherent with the national development plans of each country. This requires establishing national and local priorities and putting them in line with global priorities, public and private sources, as well as bilateral and multilateral and philanthropic sources focused on transformational results for the effective implementation of the SDGs. In order to promote a coherent framework for cooperation on financing for development, it's important to work towards harmonization between national agendas and international financing, as well as to development planning and follow-up instruments that include simultaneously economic, social, climate, and biodiversity objectives. As a key result of the Seville conference, we underscore the importance of strengthening the national fiscal frameworks, broadening access to concessional financing for middle-income countries, and strengthening South-South and triangular cooperation as key tools for accelerating the implementation of the SDGs. In this same vein, we applaud the fresh impulse in making the international financial architecture more inclusive and representative. In this regard, we underscored the importance of intergovernmental processes agreed on to establish it, to look at structural voids in current governance of debt. This is key for establishing more equitable financing models that are tailored to the realities of developing countries. President, I'd like to mention that my country is encouraging scientific diplomacy as a bridge between the generation of knowledge and its practical implementation for sustainable development, fostering public-private alliances and technology transfer in strategic sectors such as energy transition, health, and sustainable agriculture. Initiatives such as collaborative data platforms, regional scientific endeavors, and that were underscored in the 10th STI Forum are replicable models. Colombia is in favor of them being adopted through structured measures that are tailored to national contexts. Thank you very much, President.
I thank the distinguished representative of Colombia. Now I give the floor to distinguished representative of Poland, to be followed by Vietnam. Poland, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Dear Excellencies, distinguished delegates, investing in statistical systems is fundamental to producing high-quality disaggregated data, essential for sustainable development. Reliable data is the backbone of evidence-based policymaking, enhancing transparency, accountability, and public trust at all levels. At the 4th International Conference on Financing for Development, the Sevilla Platform for Action emphasized the vital role of official statistics and the need for financial support, especially within the new 2030 Pact for Effective Development Cooperation as a foundation for inclusive, data-driven decision-making. Adopted by the UN Statistical Commission in March 2025, with input from Statistics Poland, the Medellin Framework for Action guides SDG data investments, and we welcome FFD4's support while encouraging all stakeholders to strengthen statistical capacity for current and future development agendas. In the fields of science, technology, and innovation for the SDGs, Statistics Poland increasingly employs alternative data sources. This improves monitoring of vulnerable populations, such as rural communities and refugees, supporting inclusive, evidence-based policymaking. Our Data Science Academy is developing big data expertise among statisticians, enabling innovative outputs like experimental SDG statistics tailored to sustainable policy making. Moreover, Statistics Poland leads efforts to scale innovative solutions for the SDGs through regional and global cooperation. We are the leader of the UNEC in the review of lessons from the SDGs, showcasing best practices in leveraging SDG innovations. As a member of the IIEG SDGs, we help translate this national and regional experience into scalable global actions and prepare for post-2030 monitoring frameworks. Early involvement of the statistical community is crucial for the success of future global agendas. And to address the digital divide, we actively contribute to frameworks leveraging privately held data to fill critical information gaps. As demonstrated during Poland's EU presidency, this marks a new chapter in the official statistics, a vital step in digital transformation that benefits all. Thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of Poland. Now I give the floor to distinguished representative of Vietnam, to be followed by Saudi Arabia. Vietnam, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Vietnam commends the focus of our discussion today. This theme is particularly relevant as we navigate a critical phase of the 2030 agenda, where accelerated progress is urgently needed. Effective means of implementation, particularly in the area of financing and SDI, are decisive for achieving the SDGs. We welcome the outcomes of the FFD4, which reaffirmed our shared commitment to strengthening partnerships, scaling up investment, and elevating development impact for vulnerable countries and communities. To accelerate SDGs implementation, Vietnam prioritized 3 areas. First, mobilizing innovative and equitable financing. Vietnam has implemented green bonds and public-private partnerships to fund sustainable infrastructure. We call for increased official development assistance, concessional loans, and private sector investment to ensure access to finance to support climate resilience and social protection systems. Second, leveraging SDI for inclusive growth. Vietnam has introduced a new policy framework for the development of SDI and national digital transformation, focusing on strengthening institutional capacity, investing in SDI and digital infrastructure, accelerating digital transformation to enhance national governance, and promoting SDI within enterprises. Third, strengthening global partnerships. Vietnam actively engaged in knowledge exchange and SDI governance. We seek collaboration in frontier fields such as artificial intelligence, biotechnology, and other advanced technology for energy transition. Vietnam reaffirms its commitment to the 2030 Agenda, let us seize this opportunity to translate commitments into concrete action, mobilize financing and innovation at scale, and deliver on the promise of the SDGs for all. I thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of Vietnam, and now I give the floor to distinguished representative of Saudi Arabia, to be followed by major group for children and youth. Saudi Arabia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. السيدات والسادة.
Ladies and gentlemen, may the peace and blessings of Allah be upon you. Today we live in a world where there are accelerated challenges and overlapping transformations. And for the global ambition towards the SDGs to become a reality, we need more effective financing for science. The outcomes of the FFD4 in Seville has stressed that countries need to develop their investment priorities based on their national resources. However, this also includes promoting long-term financing geared towards innovation. However, the digital divide is widening. More than 2 billion people have no digital access across the world. They are deprived of tools that are a basis for healthcare, science, and economic growth. In the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, we believe that isolation was never a path towards development. Throughout history, civilizations flourish when goods, innovation, and knowledge go beyond borders. The Industrial Revolution and the Digital Revolution were the outcomes of the work to seek solutions for global challenges. This was translated into tangible steps in my country. We have launched a national fund in the value of $100 billion to invest in AI. We have also launched a program to provide training for 1 million young men and women, and we are recharting the health sector through our national strategy for biotechnology and to optimize the full potential of development. We need to bridge the following 3 gaps. First, the empowerment gap, so that countries would build their technical capacity, and the gap of application, so that projects would become actionable. And the third gap is the access gap, so that we can have technical solutions for societies that have no access to benefits. Hence, in cooperation and partnership with the World Gap Group, we have established the International Knowledge Center in Riyadh, the capital of my country, for the transfer of technology for STI, not to be a luxury, but a tool of empowerment and an access of development that needs to be accessible to all. I think.
I thank the distinguished representative of Saudi Arabia. Now I give the floor to distinguished representative of Major Group for Children and Youth, to be followed by Italy.
Thank you. My name is Jae-won Choi, and I serve as the Executive Director of the Di-Moon Foundation, and I also serve as a thematic focal point for tax at the Major Group for Children and Youth. I am 16 years old. History is being made this week as more than 300 children and youth participate in HLPF, facilitated through MGCY, and organize over 30 youth-led side events. We call upon you to listen to the voices of children and youth. Chair, 11 days have passed since FFD4. First, we demand an open and inclusive participation on FFD implementation. The youth constituency organized the Global Youth Forum in Seville. We, however, expressed our concern that FFD4 remained inaccessible for youth under the age of 18. We call upon all member states to adhere with the principles of intergenerational equity and Convention on the Rights of the Child for all future high-level meetings to be open to children. Second, over $3 trillion were spent last year into defense, war, and conflict, instead of climate, peace, and leaving no one behind. Children and youth say this is unacceptable. Third, we call for shifting economic systems towards equity and accountability and for the establishment of a UN Framework Convention on Debt. Fourth, the FFD youth constituency must be included in the interagency FFD task force, which currently has no youth voice, and in boards of multilateral development banks. Finally, we call for institutional support for the works of the UN Framework Convention on International Tax Cooperation to bring tax justice for all and to eliminate illicit financial flows. On science policy interface, we call for enhancing the formal youth constituency participation in science and technology governance, including youth seats at the Secretary General's Advisory Board on AI and the 10-member group for TFM, and initiating a youth-led youth track towards the implementation of the Global Digital Compact. Distinguished colleagues, excellencies, young people demand more than just solidarity. We need decisive, inclusive, and urgent action. People power, power in youth, power in children. We thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of Major Group for Children and Youth. Now I give the floor to distinguished representative of Italy, to be followed by United Kingdom. Italy, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Your Excellencies, dear colleagues, let me first thank the organizers for this timely and interesting meeting on the financial and technological means to achieve sustainable development for all. Italy is engaged in a renewed approach towards development finance, thanks to our commitment in multilateral fora as well as on a bilateral basis. We believe in the importance of official development aid, with our overall contribution that has increased in 2024. However, ODA alone is not sufficient to achieve the Agenda 2030 in its entirety. We consider even more foundational the leverage of public finance to unlock private investment, engage in inclusive partnership, and promote capacity building to achieve long-lasting development. To this end, we launched in Seville, together with Kenya and the OECD, a call to action on capacity building and technical assistance, with the aim of providing high-level training to more than 1,400 public officials from 4 African countries. Moreover, our new Debt for Development Swap initiative will cancel 100% of the debt for African LDCs and 50% of debt for lower middle-income African countries over the next 10 years. Finally, our side event on Monday 21st will further delve into how public-private partnerships can act as a driver of digitalization in the agro-industrial sector. International financing is pivotal, but today, development requires the technological capacities to face the challenges of tomorrow. AI is universally considered one of the most timely instruments to achieve the SDGs. And as Italy, we are playing our part through the establishment of the Rome's AI Hub for Sustainable Development, launched on June 20 together with UNDP. A legacy of Italy's G7 presidency of 2024, the Hub promises a fundamental paradigm shift, centering African innovators from 14 countries in shaping the global AI agenda, making sure that the continent is not left behind in the race to artificial intelligence solutions for development. All these elements are encompassed by our Mattei Plan for Africa. Together with our projects in other regions of the world, they show our commitment to help our partners across the globe to achieve the SDGs. We will stand firm on this path. Thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of Italy, and now I give the floor to distinguished representative of United Kingdom, to be followed by China. United Kingdom, you have the floor.
Thank you. FFD4 represented a significant step change in how we finance development and climate action, and how we accelerate SDG progress through use of evidence, data, science, and technology. The adoption of the outcome document and a successful conference in Seville shows our collective commitment to the FFD agenda and to multilateralism as a whole. The Financing for Development Conference set out 3 key shifts. The first, around making the system work better for developing countries, increasing voice and representation, access to evidence and research, addressing fragmentation and building resilience. The second is around mobilizing more public and private international financing for SDGs, focused on greater impact on people and the planet. And the third is a focus around domestic resource mobilization and tackling unsustainable debt and providing the more sustainable sources of finance. The Seville platforms for action are key for long-lasting action and implementation. And at Seville, the UK was proud to launch 2 on public markets with the Philippines, focused on unlocking private capital for climate and development into emerging and developing markets through stock exchanges, and to scale up the use of pre-arranged financing in partnership with Barbados's Bridgetown initiative. We must build on this positive momentum and swiftly move to implementation. This includes identifying key commitments in the outcome document to collectively drive forward, here at the UN and through other fora, and ensuring that the Seville platforms for action are more than the sum of their parts, and identifying where we need to intensify existing efforts, including reforms to the G20 Common Framework. Digital transformation is also an enabler of SDG acceleration, and we're supporting countries to achieve inclusive, affordable, and sustainable last-mile connectivity to improve digital public infrastructure and access to digital services. So to conclude, Chair, FFD4 has provided us with a strong foundation to build momentum for SDG implementation. We must take advantage of this. We must move forward at pace and in partnership. I thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of United Kingdom. Now I give the floor to the distinguished representative of China, to be followed by IAEA. China, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Today's world is marked by turmoil. With rising unilateralism and protectionism, the international community, particularly developing countries, faces a multitude of challenges, and progress towards achieving the 2030 Agenda remains well below expectations. It is imperative that the global community unite to address these challenges. First, we must foster political consensus and strengthen global partnership. The 4th FFD has just concluded, delivering a strong political signal in support of multilateralism, solidarity, and cooperation. We should seize this opportunity to place development issues at the heart of the global macroeconomic policy agenda and extend more effective support to countries in the global south. Second, we must prioritize key areas and scale up investments in development. A people-centered approach is essential to effectively address the pressing needs of developing countries in critical areas such as poverty eradication, food security, health, and climate change. Developed countries should fully honor their commitments to ODA and climate finance, while international financial institutions and multilateral development banks should play a greater role. Third, we must reform the international financial architecture and enhance global economic governance. Efforts should be made to promote the liberalization and facilitation of trade and investment, mitigate the adverse spillover effects of macroeconomic policies of major developed economies, and foster an open environment for development. It is also essential to strengthen the representation and voice of developing countries in the international financial system, reinforce the global financial safety net, and build an efficient and resilient development financial framework. Fourth, we must embrace innovation-driven development and accelerate the application of scientific and technological advancements. Greater investments in science and technology is essential, along with enhanced international cooperation, and the promotion of technology transfer and the sharing of innovation is essential. China stands ready to leverage the group of friends for international cooperation on AI capacity building as a platform to foster consensus and deepen cooperation with other nations. Together, we can implement the AI capacity building action plan and harness the potential of AI to advance worldwide development. Thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of China. Now I give the floor to distinguished representative of IAEA, to be followed by Dominican Republic.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Excellency, colleagues. The International Atomic Energy Agency supports the member states in leveraging nuclear technologies to address global challenges in the areas of clean energy, public health, food security, environmental protection, and water resource management. IAEA cooperates with 150 member states by its technical cooperation program. Nuclear technology offers transformative solutions. For example, nuclear power provided low-carbon electricity, and innovations such as small modular reactor have the potential to expand access to clean energy. Mutation breeding generates better plants, and isotope technique create better irrigation system to bolster crop resilience and food security. Radiation medicine is essential in cancer diagnosis and treatment. Over 50% of patients will require radiotherapy during the course of their cancer treatment. Nuclear techniques are used to monitor microplastic in the ocean. Nuclear techniques offer reliable tools to investigate, detect, and contain outbreak of zoonotic diseases. Radiation technology can be used in wastewater treatment and to improve process in industry. To achieve these goals, the IAEA collaborates with the government, UN agencies, financial institutions, the private sectors, and the academic. In particular, international financial institutions are recognizing the role of nuclear power and are seeing nuclear power as a part of electrification mix that prioritize accessibility, affordability, and reliability while managing emission responsibly. The IAEA had just recently signed an agreement with World Bank to support the safe, secure, and responsible use of nuclear energy in developing countries, and look forward to continue this work with other international financial institutions in the year to come. The IAEA stands ready to deep cooperation with all stakeholders to expand the contribution of nuclear science and technology to a most equitable and sustainable future. Thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of IAEA. Now I give the floor to distinguished representative of Dominican Republic, to be followed by Ethiopia. Dominican Republic, you have the floor.
Muchas gracias, señor presidente. La República.
Thank you, President. The Dominican Republic reiterates its firm commitment to the full implementation of the 2030 Agenda, convinced that it will only be possible if we make progress in the strengthening of the implementation frameworks with a focus on equity, innovation, and sustainability. For our country, mobilizing resources means not only guaranteeing external finance, but also improving the efficiency of public expenditure, optimizing our institutions, and broadening international cooperation opportunities. In this regard, we have opted to transform our national systems in pillars that can facilitate sustainable development. We've made progress in the digitalization of the state, the integration of technology in public services, and driving forward modern regulatory frameworks that promote transparency, participation, and inclusion. An example of this is the national public procurement system that today enables us to engage in sustainable procurement and opening opportunities to SMEs and reducing corruption through technological tools. What's more, we've also strengthened alliances with strategic partners, both from the global north as well as from the global south, recognizing the value of South-South and triangular cooperation as models of mutual learning with contextualized solutions. However, middle-income countries such as the Dominican Republic face structural challenges that are persistent: limited access to concessional financing, technological restrictions, and capacity gaps. Therefore, we reiterate our appeal for a more just international financial architecture that takes account of our multidimensional vulnerabilities and supports institutional transformational efforts, such as political will, international cooperation, and a focus on evidence-based solutions. We're convinced that we'll be able to accelerate the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals and build a more just, resilient, and sustainable future. Thank you very much.
I thank the distinguished representative of Dominican Republic. Now I give the floor to distinguished representative of Ethiopia to be followed by Women's Major Group, Kyrgyzstan, Mexico, and FAO.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Dear Excellencies, distinguished delegates, FFD4 presented a critical opportunity in galvanizing momentum for mobilizing finance and partnerships to achieve the urgently needed SDG investment push in the STI sector. It's a step in the right direction that the recently adopted Compromiso de Sevilla embedded STI in the SDG financing mechanism and acknowledged the need to close the persistent digital divide to realize the full potential of digital technology in achieving financial inclusion for all. However, this ultimately depends on accelerating the much-needed support for implementing mission-oriented, country-led national innovation strategies, including STI for SDG roadmaps. In Ethiopia's context, we are embarking on a digital transformation journey that's aimed at leveraging digitally enabled pathways to tap the huge potential of the digital economy for inclusive national prosperity, while prioritizing our key economic pillars. The National Digital Transformation Strategy, known as Digital Ethiopia 2025, serves as the blueprint for Ethiopia's unique mission-oriented approach. The strategy aims to build an inclusive digital economy that will catalyze the realization of Ethiopia's broader development vision. This is essentially aligned with our comprehensive economic liberalization and the expanded role of the private sector in opening new horizons. To that end, we have put in place conducive regulatory framework while significantly increasing resources for digital infrastructure development. Mr. Chairperson, the absence of targeted strategies that facilitate the benefit of emerging technologies in developing countries is deeply concerning. To change this reality, Ethiopia believes that addressing the challenges including high borrowing costs, private sector engagement, and access to innovation in science is critical. We also believe that we need to strengthen our cooperation in building capacities of LDCs in data protection and ensuring data sovereignty. It is within this broader context that Ethiopia proposes facilitating access to STI funds and technology transfer, and knowledge sharing should be given a priority as we move ahead with the implementation of the SDGs. I thank you, Mr. Chairperson.
I thank the distinguished representative of Ethiopia. Now I give the floor to distinguished representative of Women's Major Group to be followed by Kyrgyzstan.
Good morning. My name is Veronica Brown, and I deliver this statement on behalf of the major groups and other stakeholder and the Women's Major Group. The High-level Political Forum comes at a pivotal time to deliver on the promises of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and to leave no one behind. Its ministerial declaration is an opportunity to catalyze renewed ambition and accelerated action, to double down on our efforts to achieve gender equality amid the 30th anniversary of the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action. Yet, we deeply regret that the ministerial declaration, as currently drafted, and in particular in its review of SDG 3 and 5, represents a significant weakening of our shared commitments and risks significant regression in global consensus on the vital importance of SDG 3 and 5 to the achievement of the entire 2030 Agenda. This will mean the erosion of decades of progress on the fundamental role of gender equality and health as central pillars of sustainable development. Let us be clear. Any erosion of agreed SDG language is not a neutral act. It's a rollback. It's a step backwards for human rights, for development, for justice, and it is a threat to the lives and well-being of millions. In diligently concluding the ministerial declaration, we strongly urge all member states to rise to the urgency of the times, to strengthen their commitments and double down on the ambition required to the achievement of the 2030 Agenda for All, with gender equality as an integral and cross-cutting prerequisite. SDG 17 is premised on the importance of multi-stakeholder engagement and meaningful partnerships, including with civil society, As civil society, we have a right to a permanent seat at the table, and we remain steadfast in our commitment to monitoring and defending the 2030 Agenda for all. Let's honor and protect the 2030 Agenda by having the courage to invigorate it, now more than ever working together in solidarity. Today, feminists are wearing green to demand universal health coverage and sexual and reproductive health and rights for all. And we will be here wearing red all week, raising the red flag to say that gender equality is under attack. We resist, and we will be holding the line, and we hope member states will join us. Thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of Women's Major Group. Now I give the floor to a distinguished representative of Kyrgyzstan to be followed by Mexico. Kyrgyzstan, you have the floor.
Distinguished government representatives, colleagues from the United Nations system. In today's increasingly complex global environment of the changing climate, geopolitical tensions, mounting debt vulnerabilities, sustainable development cannot be achieved without the effective mobilization of resources and the application of innovative, inclusive solutions. We, the Kyrgyz Republic, are actively working to strengthen our domestic financing architecture. Recent years have seen tangible reforms in tax policy and administration, the digitalization of public finance management, and efforts to reduce overdependence on external borrowing. Initiatives have also been launched to enhance citizens' engagement in budget oversight and to improve fiscal transparency in line with SDGs 16 and 17. Science, technology, and innovations are key enablers of transformative and sustainable growth. Kyrgyzstan has adopted national strategies aimed at economic digitalization, support for startups, the development of smart technologies in agriculture, and the promotion of renewable energies. SDG-related data platforms being developed and partnerships between academia, the private sector, and government are being scaled up. Increasing the participation of youth and women in the STI ecosystem remains a strategic focus for the country. Despite these efforts, Kyrgyzstan faces a persistent SDG financing gap, which ranges from 1.5 to $2 billion annually. In this context, it is critical to strengthen developing countries' access to science, technology, and innovation. We underscore the need for global platforms and equitable partnerships that enable the transfer of knowledge and technologies to accelerate digital and green transition. The Kyrgyz Republic reaffirms the importance of enhanced international cooperation and calls on development partners to intensify support at the intersection of finance and technology. This includes capacity building, technical assistance, and collaborative research. In a context of constrained resources, it is precisely innovation, efficiency, and inclusive approaches that will determine our collective ability to achieve the SDGs. I thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of Kyrgyzstan. Now I give the floor to distinguished representative of Mexico to be followed by FAO. And Mexico, you have the floor.
Mexico firmly believes that the mobilization of resources must go hand in hand with economic development, one that prioritizes shares prosperity, inclusion, and sustainability. The transition towards a more just and resilient economic model is not only a climate or social necessity, but rather it's also a strategic opportunity to strengthen our productive sovereignty and to modernize our economies. In this spirit, we are encouraging the Mexico Plan, a roadmap for sustainable economic growth based on 5 fronts: productive infrastructure, strengthening strategic sectors such as electrical mobility and semiconductors, regional development, and expanded access to technical and university education and training human talent aligned with new productive needs. This model is supported by concrete financing instruments for development. Mexico has been a pioneer in sovereign bonds linked to the SDGs, as well as green bonds and gender and blue bonds. These are geared towards sustainable fisheries and marine conservation. Furthermore, we have implemented tax incentives up to 25% for companies that invest in technological innovation and training, especially in strategic regions. Additionally, we have integrated environmental criteria as well as social and governance ones with the public financing mechanisms that strengthen transparency, accountability, and aligning public expenditure with the goals of the 2030 Agenda. We've also developed sustainable taxonomy for Mexico since 2023, a tool that classifies economic activities according to their social and environmental impact, avoiding greenwashing and directing capital towards sectors with a high transformational impact. In science, technology and innovation, we are in favour of a digital economy that is inclusive, including clean technology, data infrastructure that is open, and strengthening national capacities in research with the inclusion of youth, women, and indigenous peoples as key stakeholders. These strategies are present in our region, showing that it's possible to finance sustainable development through innovative and responsible tools. Mexico reiterates its commitment to a just, jointly responsible transition because for us, financing the 2030 Agenda is synonymous with building well-being with equity and dignity to ensure that nobody is left outside and nobody is left behind. Thank you very much.
I thank the distinguished representative of Mexico. Now I give the floor to distinguished representative of FAO.
Thank you, Mr. President. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. To address the urgent and growing challenges of food insecurity and malnutrition, it is critical to both increase the amount and improve the efficiency of development aid and finance investment in agri-food systems. This requires scaling up of traditional aid flows and deploying innovative financial tools that can attract additional resources and maximize impact. Defining clear targets for development aid, financial flows for food security and nutrition is essential, as recommended in the 2024 State of Food Security and Nutrition Report. Scaling up these flows is vital to support agri-food systems transformation, which is a key lever for achieving the 2030 Agenda. Promoting technology transfer in the agri-food sector is necessary to close the widening productivity gap between low-income countries, low-middle-income countries, and higher-income countries, especially with the climate crisis, where technological solutions are critical for mitigation, adaptation, and resilience. Global coordination must be enhanced to ensure financial stability and the capacity of net food importing countries to pay their food bills. Addressing exchange rate fluctuations and financial instability through instruments like a food shock window mechanism can mitigate shocks and strengthen resilience. Market transparency through timely, credible data is essential to reduce uncertainty and guide policies. Sudden trade policy changes worsen market instability and price volatility, thus strengthening initiatives such as the G20 agricultural market information systems is crucial. A rules-based, inclusive, multilateral trading system with the WTO at its core remains essential, complemented by regional trade agreements, fostering economic integration and SDG progress. Global financial flows for agri-food systems remain insufficient and overly reliant on public funding. Food security and nutrition receives less than a quarter of official development assistance, with only 34% addressing key drivers of food insecurity. Public funding alone cannot transform agri-food systems, especially amid fiscal constraints. Meeting financial needs requires political will, collective action, strong partnerships, and enhanced cooperation models to de-risk investments Innovative finance is important to mobilize private investment and bridge financing gaps for small-scale farmers and small and medium enterprises. Scaling investment in data, science, technology, and innovation, STI, and bridging the gap between STI availability and local uptake, especially in low-middle-income countries, requires transformative governance and strengthened science policy interfaces. Thank you, Mr. President.
I thank you, the distinguished representative of FAO, Excellencies, distinguished delegates. We have just heard from the last speaker on the list. I once again thank the moderator for expertly guiding an interesting exchange of views. I also thank our distinguished speakers and the delegations for their substantive and valuable contributions to these sessions. Distinguished delegates, we have thus completed our program of work for this meeting. The High-level Political Forum will meet this afternoon at 3 p.m. in Conference Room 4 to continue with its program of work. Detailed information on the program is available on the HLPF website. And with this, the meeting is adjourned.